Welcome to the Mind of Christ here on YouTube. My name is Justin Amos, and I'm so excited you're tuning in today because I am honored to be joined by my first international guest, the one and only Laura Howe. Laura, thanks so much for joining me today.
It is my pleasure, and what an honor. Now I'm a close neighbor, not too international, but I love the boast, the flex.
Yes.
It's awesome.
Oh, awesome. Well, just a little bit about Laura. She is a registered social worker in Ontario, Canada. She's the founder of Hope Made Strong, which is an organization dedicated to equipping Christian leaders with resources to help with the mental health crisis that we're living in. Laura runs the Care Ministry podcast, which is dedicated to also equipping ministry leaders and providing resources to help churches provide care for their communities. The Care Ministry podcast can be found on Apple, Spotify, and Google, so definitely check those out. She's also put together an incredible resource to help you host a mental health Sunday at your church. She's provided a toolkit to use with just about everything you could possibly need to devote an entire service to breaking the stigma around mental health while offering hope to your church members. And I'll post links below in the description to Mental Health Sunday and the Care Ministry and really everything else Laura is up to. And lastly, Laura is also the host of the Church Mental Health Summit, which I just had the privilege of benefiting from. The summit caught my attention because I saw Dr. John Townsend as one of the speakers, and I am studying in Dr. Townsend's mental health program to become a licensed counselor. And Laura also had Anita Phillips on as a guest speaker, whose recent book, The Garden Within, is already, I believe, a New York Times
Mhm.
bestseller. And she is a professor at my school that I get to begin class with next month. So, just two gifted mental health professionals that she had on her panel. And basically, I knew that I had to have Laura on my channel once I saw she was doing with the summit, let alone all the other things she's involved in. So, Laura, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. It's exciting to be here.
So, I just went over some of your professional work, but I'd
Mhm.
love for our viewers just to kind of hear a little bit about just your personal life, kind of who you are. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and just your family so that our viewers can get just a little bit more of a glimpse into your world?
Yeah, I would love to share about my favorite part of my life, which is my family. As you said, I am in Ontario, Canada, and I live in a small rural town in the middle of southwestern Ontario, and there are more cows than people. And so I like it. You just think, hey, God, use me in some capacity, and you never know what God, the sense of humor that He has. And so my husband and I live here and with our two girls, 12 and 10 years old. And right now it is just before Christmas and they couldn't be more excited. So we are all about family and volunteer in our local church, and our kids are into theater. So we always, our volunteer time is often surrounded by our kids' activities. So we're,
Yeah.
yeah, just a normal family with two kids and a dog.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, let's dive in. Well, to get things started, I would love to hear you share about what fostered a desire within you to equip the church to engage in the mental health arena.
So, as you mentioned, I'm a clinical mental health social worker and been working for about 15 years in my hometown, in my community, where walking alongside those who are marginalized and suffering, anything from homelessness to families and crisis. And I had one foot in my community healthcare, and then one foot in my church where I volunteered and was available on a prayer team or small group leaders or wherever is it is. And I wish I could say this came out of an inspiration, but I'm going to be honest, this came out of an incredible deep frustration
Mm,
of how crappy the church does supporting mental health. It sounds awful, but it is what it is. And while my church had amazing intentions, and many churches have amazing intentions and wanting to be there for people, just how do we do that? What does that look like? And so I saw the discrepancy and the differences between my work in the community as a social worker, as someone who was meeting with people and hearing the desperation and the stories that people had, versus going to church and the misguided intentions of what they were doing. And I was like, we can do better. We are The church is perfectly positioned in the neighborhoods of our communities where it is engaging with people, real life people, and we could do better. And so that's where all of this passion came from. Is like, how can we support people? Also want to share a little bit of myself in
Yeah.
that after about 10 years of working front lines as a therapist and in crisis, I had a lot of people on my caseload that had trauma, wartime trauma, refugee trauma,
Mm.
as well as, relation and trauma and abuse in their history. And I was hearing those stories every day, all day, and I experienced compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, and burnout in my work as a caregiver. And so, between the frustration of the church really missing the mark and how to care for people, as well as recognizing, oh man, as caregivers, as ministry leaders, as pastors, they must be feeling similar feelings that I was feeling when I was hearing suffering every day and all day. And so, those two combinations, how to care for the caregiver and how to care for others, and recognizing that church is perfectly positioned right there in that wedge, in that niche, and saying, "Okay, God, I'm willing. Let's do this."
Yeah. Amen. That is beautiful. Well said. And I appreciate the honesty too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's something that we just need to talk more about. That when you hear, there's a lot of people who are caring for their loved ones, whether they have all, dementia
Yeah.
or chronic illness, and it can be taxing. And we often don't talk about that. So whether you're a ministry leader at a church or caring for a loved one or a clinician doing this work day in and day out, trauma is sticky. Trauma is
Yeah.
like it sticks to you, right? And no matter how much you try, it really impacts our outlook on life and our
Yeah.
well-being. And so we just need to talk more about that and take that shame away.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. So, Laura, what would you say are some practical steps that Christians could take to get their church involved in helping those in their communities struggling with their mental health?
Mhm. So if you're like me, where you're sitting in the pews and you're looking around and you're just like, man, we could do so much more, but I feel like I'm helpless. I don't have the authority or maybe the ability to commit time. When you come up with ideas in church, you better be ready to lead them. So sometimes it's hard. It's hard to sit back and say, we need to do something different when you feel inadequate yourself for a
Yeah.
number of reasons. So, I have a couple ideas. One is just talking about mental health, maybe even in your small group that you're a part of, or if you're volunteering in kids ministry or the cafe or in the greeters, just having those conversations side by side with someone, and listening more than giving advice, and
Yeah.
empathizing, saying, "Man, that sounds hard," and just being willing to go just one step deeper. If
Yeah.
you do have the ability to impact or influence or, you know, talk to leaders about what your church can do, recommend hosting a church mental health Sunday at your church. And this is just dedicating a Sunday morning service around the conversation of mental health. Oftentimes, mental health is relegated to a small group on a Wednesday in like the far back corner of the church in a small room, or maybe
Yeah.
someone's home. It's often hidden away, but it is so powerful to say those words from the stage, from the pulpit, from the
Yeah.
leader who's speaking on a Sunday morning. Mental health is so relatable. Everyone experiences mental health. Everyone, whether
Yeah.
it's grief or a diagnosis or burnout, we all experience mental health. So it is relatable. And so that's one thing, is just talking about it. The second thing I would say is connect to your church could connect to your community. it is really powerful connecting to your community and having your community either coming in and doing some training around what is mental health, or you're able to volunteer in organizations by, maybe
Yeah.
being a driver or providing lunch or food or
Yeah.
supplies. And so connecting with your community so you can learn what is actually happening in your community
Yeah.
around mental health and what people's struggles are. I would say those are the two easiest or the first steps.
Yeah, that's awesome, and I can affirm those. I remember about 4 years ago, I led my church as the associate pastor through a 3-week sermon series on mental health, and it kind of
Amazing.
sparked a revolution.
Hmm.
We did a follow-up class. I brought in a friend who is a church attender, and she's a licensed therapist, and we offered a 4-week class on Wednesday evenings and had 150 people
Yeah.
show up, and that led to starting a mental health support group, and we've also partnered with social work professors at the local university and had them come in and do some trauma training with people. And so
People are
100%.
waiting. Yeah, people are waiting for someone to talk about what they've been experiencing,
Yes.
because that's what the church is all about, is living life side by side with people, and if we can't talk about this aspect, which impacts our work, our families, our
Yeah.
well-being, then, what is this for? And the Bible talks a lot about mental health, and so I think this is a really great opportunity to show up in a real way for people and meet people where they're at.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. All right. Well, I'd love to hear more, Laura, about just kind of the story of you being the host of the Church Mental Health Summit. Can you give our viewers just maybe a little bit of a brief overview of what the summit is, its purpose, and just what that experience is like for you?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the summit has been such a fun roller coaster ride to be a part of. I feel like I'm a passenger in this getaway train, or I don't know what analogy I should use, but it has been a wild ride and so much fun. So, we were speaking before we pushed record and saying, Where have, how long have I been doing this? I've only been doing this work for about 4 years. And so this has really, it's been like a slingshot forward. And so the first year that I said, "Okay, God, I'm jumping in, I'm diving in." And it was January of 2020. So 3 months later, COVID hit, and I was like, "Oh, junk. What did I just do? How do I do this? I'm from a small rural town in Canada.
Oh,
How how God, you've called this to me. You put this in my heart. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do."
yeah.
And any traveling, any training that I had set up, everything canceled. And so I was like, a good friend of mine, she's brilliant. And she's like, "Laura, you need to do a summit." And I was like, "No, no, no. I'm from World Mental Health Day. I'm going to do like a campaign online. I'll do like a fun, snappy download." And she's like, "Laura, nobody's doing anything. Do an online summit." And so in 8 weeks, we launched the Church Mental Health Summit, from the idea to it happening. And my friend was right. Surprisingly, people answered their contact me pages on their websites, and people were willing to share. They were at
Wow.
home recognizing that people are struggling, they're suffering, and this isn't going to end anytime soon, and it's only going to compound. And so
Yeah.
within 8 weeks, we had over about 60 speakers, and then
Wow.
over 2,000 people registered from over 40 countries around the world. It was
Wow.
unbelievable, and I thought this was gonna be a one-time thing on World Mental Health Day, October 10th, and then I sat back and, cried for a couple days at the overwhelm. I was just like, "Lord, what is happening? How do I steward this?" And so then I said, "Okay, I'll do it again." And so this past year, we just hosted our 4th Church Mental Health Summit. We had 70 speakers. We had over 10,000 people register from 125 different countries.
Wow.
It is outstanding. And this is both wonderful and humbling all at the same time. It is wonderful to know that there are so many people passionate about mental health all around the world. This is a human condition that we are all walking through. But it also is heartbreaking that people are so desperate that there's not there's it's hard to find answers. It's hard to find direction. It's hard to know who do I trust or what do I listen to. And so it is a humbling position and it is an inspiring position for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Wow. Awesome. Man, what an impact you are making. My goodness.
Yeah, and we're just getting started
Whew.
because we are this year we just introduced. Now it's brand new, so we're kind of building the plane while we fly it. But we're all human, and so I think there's grace for that. We're all figuring this out together.
Yeah.
That we're introducing local church mental health summits. So while the online summits are shiny and sparkly and fun, and there's big names and big registration numbers, let's be honest. Like it is not Justin, this isn't going to change the what we do side by side. This is just going to perpetuate the conversation. It's going to
Mm,
build momentum. But my heartbeat is let's shift the culture in our local churches all around the world and all across the
yeah.
country.
Yeah.
And so I want to encourage people that if you want to host a local summit in your region and you want to champion mental health in your community, then let's connect because we are equipping churches to host local church mental health summits with local speakers and highlight resources so that your region can gather the pastors and gather the leaders of your community and you can be a catalyst for shifting the culture around faith and mental health in your community. So that is where the next step is going.
Wow, that is so exciting. Whew.
Mhm.
How wonderful. Man, you are doing some incredible work, Laura.
And I think that's the thing is we're side by side doing it. I'm just me sitting in my office here in Canada, and you're just you sitting in your
Yep.
local church in your town. But when we can come together, that's where the magic happens. It's
Yep.
in collaboration and it's in
Yep.
community that
Yep.
that change happens.
Absolutely. Oh, that's excellent. All right. So here's kind of an interesting question, Laura. If Jesus were walking among us today
Mhm.
in America, in Canada, in Europe, wherever we find ourselves, how do you think he would handle the mental health crisis that we're living
Mm.
in?
I think he would be very similar to all of us, where we are both heartbroken and energized to support people. I think about the story of Jesus and the woman who was brought before him condemned in adultery, where the world was pointing fingers and requiring to take a black or white stance, guilty or non guilty, right or wrong, left or right, on or off. And I think right now there is this tension and this pressure to find guilt or reason or fault amongst many, whether you want to say in politics or on the news or in our own minds. We're like, why? You're wanting to find causality and and I love how Jesus resisted and he met the woman, the individual. And when you look at trauma informed care, so often when we want to support someone, we often go straight for wanting to solve a problem, find resolve, or make the pain go away. But that's not what Jesus did in his example when someone was brought to him who was clearly in trauma. Right? That woman caught in adultery, we know the context of her situation is there was probably more to her story, whether this was a choice of hers or whether that she found herself in poverty and had no other opportunity and found herself in this situation just as a survival mode. So when Jesus when this woman was brought to Jesus, he didn't immediately pick a side, black or white, right or wrong, guilty or innocent. He didn't condemn her. He first started drawing in the sand. He calmed the situation down so that people can think clearly and he can what we that what's that's called in trauma informed care is he regulated. So often we are heightened in this situation. We are experiencing anxiety, panic, depression. We are, everyone is really heightened and we want to say who's at fault and what's going on. And Jesus is like, okay, I'm just going to tend to your need. So take a deep breath, play with a fidget. I have little kids, and so they have fidget spinners that drive me crazy all over the house, but, you know, just calm and let's think clearly. And then he related to this woman. He saw this woman as an individual, and he asked her questions to her, not to the crowd, not to the accusers, not to the show, but he related to her one on one. And then he reasoned. And then he said, "Go and sin no more." He didn't identify what the sin was. He didn't identify whether it was guilty or not. And I think if Jesus was here today, he would regulate, as in tend to our emotional and needs to calm our nerves and calm our senses and slow our heartbeat and slow our breath. He would relate to people and see them as individuals who are suffering. He would build relationship and there would be compassion to them. And then he would reason with the root cause, which for every individual is different. And so I just think in this time, we're so quick to answer. We're quick to pick sides. We're quick to want to find a solution. And I think if Jesus was here, he would really follow this model of trauma informed care of regulate, relate, and reason. And how I apply that to my personal life is that if someone is coming to me, a friend or my own children or my husband, or when I'm serving at my church in prayer, I don't I don't try to find a solution. I breathe with them. I give space. I allow for silence. I listen more than I speak. And then I ask them curious questions and relating to them as a human being. And I say, wow, that must be really hard. I provide empathy and compassion. And then I say, okay, what are the next steps? I ask questions and then relate and reason with them of what is the next steps. And while I don't know what Jesus, I'm certainly not that smart nor that spiritual to know what Jesus would do. But when I look at an example of what he would do with an individual, that is my responsibility. What can I do to the next individual that comes to me who's really struggling?
Yeah. Oh, that is fantastic. Great words. Makes me think of, more than a fix, what people want to know is that they're not alone.
They're not alone. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's huge.
Yeah.
That's life-changing right there. We're created
Yeah.
to be in community and connection. And the very first thing when someone is suffering or struggling is to isolate. It is for
Yeah.
me, right? Oh, I don't want to be the downer. I don't feel good. I don't want to be the party. It's so overwhelming to go outside and face people and what are their thoughts about me. And so
Yeah.
we isolate, but we're created to be in community and
Yeah.
connection with people.
Yeah.
And so how can we do that with being trauma informed? How can we do that compassionately is really, really important.
Yeah. Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. All right, Laura. So my last question is this. Why should the church take mental health seriously? So, kind of to all the pastors and ministry leaders that will be watching this video, what would you say to them about taking mental health seriously?
This is your greatest opportunity to
Mhm.
connect with people that we have seen. I don't know. I've never seen anything like this. Maybe post war or something like that. I don't want to be dramatic, but it's one of those things that we know that every single person, there's this awakening and a realization around well being and mental health. And God put your church directly in the heart of the neighborhood of your community. And you have such a wealth of people in your congregation. People often think, oh, if someone's struggling with mental health, go to a professional, go to professional, go to professional. And while professionals are absolutely integral, absolutely key, there are so many additional supports that can be provided as people journey. Not everyone has the resources, the means, or they're ready to see a professional, but they are coming to the church. We know that research tells us that if someone is part of a faith community, they are more likely to go to their church than they are a professional as their first stop for care. And so, ministry leader, pastor, if you're listening to this, ready or not, they're coming to you. And so, how can we equip and come alongside you so that you feel confident and competent to be able to walk alongside people? I'm a big advocate of peer support. Those with lived experience have an incredible value add to your community. You know, when I had little kids and I had babies, I didn't always go to the pediatrician or the midwife or the professionals when I needed support. I went to my aunties and my mom and my friends who are just a bit further along in the journey. And so if we can harness that power of peer support and the church feels trained and equipped to be able to not solve the problem, not diagnose, not do therapy, but walk alongside and companion shoulder to shoulder and just be with people, man, you're going to transform your community with care. You're going to be able to change your culture of your community. People will find a safe place to belong to. People will be able to identify that they have purpose and
Mm,
value, and you're able to offer hope. And belonging, purpose, and hope are the three core pillars of a care ministry that I often talk about over and over and over on my podcast. So if you do log
yeah.
in, you're going to be hearing about belonging, purpose, and hope.
Mm,
And the church is perfectly equipped to be able to offer these three things. In the
yeah.
15 years of counseling that I offered, it didn't matter if the person struggled with addictions and homelessness or mental illness, or if they were an executive struggling with any of those things, because that doesn't distinguish. Every single person that walked through that door longed for belonging, purpose,
Yeah.
and hope. And no other organization in your community are able to offer these three components like the local church does. It's like God created it that way. And
Mm,
so I really encourage pastors to lean into this space. Don't be scared. You don't have to know all the answers. There are other people that know the things that you don't know. We could partner together in
yeah.
offering a care ministry that is strategic, is sustainable, and that is able to transform your community.
Yeah. Oh, that is so wonderful. I mean, I'm just thinking anybody watching this, they can just look in the description below. I'm going to link all your resources to host a mental health Sunday or, to join your podcast. And there's no excuse to not do something, right?
There's a lot of excuses, but whether that's not still not gonna stop someone coming to you. So you're still gonna
Exactly.
be in the space where someone is looking to you for answers. And I ask what and I don't want this to be fear-mongering or threatening, but it is gonna happen if it hasn't happened yet. And so I just want to equip you and support you and come alongside you so that when that happens, you
Yeah.
feel confident in your ability and knowing what your role is, your function, or how you can best support others.
Yeah. Oh, that is wonderful. Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining me today, and for the work that you're doing, really around the world. You are a true gift to the body of Christ
Mm,
and to the
thank
kingdom of
you.
God. And so it's been my honor to have you join me today. And I hope everyone checks out all the wonderful work that you're doing with all the resources I'm going to post below. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And I hope this is certainly not the last time that our paths cross.
I would love to connect again. Thank you so much.